Hey all, this is Mith from Millennial Fantasy, and for today I wanted to do something a little bit different. We are looking at some footage from me doing the twinning from a while back, and I decided to just, take it on a bit chill, talk with you guys about some of the lore going on in this place, and maybe some of the stuff we see, and kind of what I think about the place in general, looking back on it from here. So it's sort of a review video, but a bit of a more chilled, laid-back vibe about it. And obviously you can see me doing what I do best in these kind of places. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's a bit of an homage to the Crystal Tower and the Crystal Tower series, right? So the 3 raid instances that we had in A Realm Reborn, which are always the ones that show up when you do the Duty Finder Alliance raid. But yeah, you notice the place, it has a bit of a color scheme that's very different, but the sort of aesthetics and the architecture, I think, is pretty much the same in that regard, right? So yeah, we're just starting off with some trash here. So before we go on, let's dive into some of the lore here. I'll read this to you guys because I thought it was interesting. So the thing that it says when you go into the Duty Finder, and we'll wait 1 sec here until we open this door. So that, yes. Look at the Duty Finder piece here, which says the following. Since its sudden appearance in Northrend, the Crystal Tower has been a source of great mystery, one which the people of the Crystarium have barely begun to unravel. Now that the city is free from the threat of the Light Wardens, researchers have been afforded the opportunity to explore the innermost reaches of the tower, though they soon found their way barred by hordes of ferocious guardians. An ethereal disturbance detected from inside is believed to be in some way linked to their appearance, and you have been tasked with not only clearing a path for the researchers, but with investigating the cause of the anomaly. So yeah, that's what the Duty Finder says. So that sort of gives you an inkling on what happens here. I didn't record the previous pre-quests part here, but we'll have a bit at the end that gives a sort of a glimpse of what's happening here. That being said though, like the beginning part wasn't that interesting, so to say. I won't be going into my gameplay too much in these videos. I mean, in general the instances are kind of pretty simple relatively. I'm not saying I'm doing particularly well. This was a while back when I was definitely a bit less experienced, and I remember myself thinking like, oh, this was going really good, and now I'm actually looking back at it, I'm like, meh. You've done better. But I won't go into the gameplay too much here. I think the other content we do in Eden and the content we do with the live streams is probably a bit more interesting in that part. So if you haven't checked those out, make sure you check out the Eden videos. I'll post a little card in the corner so you can check the playlist out. And also we do a lot of live streams as well. Those are a bit less, how do you say it, content made for viewers. But if you guys would want to tune in or see some of our best kills, I put some timestamps in there as well so you guys can check it out. So yeah, like judging by the trash, there isn't that much that's happening that's very interesting, right? I mean, I'm definitely, doing some DPS. So I'm not maybe getting some of the tank and healer mechanics that's going on, but judging from where I am standing and what I am seeing right now, there's not a lot of interesting stuff happening. So yeah, there's probably like a tank buster here or there that can happen, but other than that, I don't think there's too much happening. We'll discuss the boss when we actually get there, so don't worry about that. Before we get there though, I wanna, because I didn't record the pre-part of the quest to get in here. I'll do that after the first boss actually, while we're doing some more trash. Let's get into the first boss first. So here we have, what's his name? FFXIV. Beautiful, pretty cool model. It has like this little curl thing going on, right? But there's some interesting mechanics here for sure. So you see these beasts to the side. And those are pretty important, because if he does a mechanic which hits one of the beasts that's on your side, then they actually release, and that means you will have to fight those as well. So one of the most imperative things here is to not get hit, well, not let his abilities hit one of the classes. So you see here the markers above our heads, and you see the amount of blades as well. That's like an order in which he will do those slashes you just saw. So as I just mentioned about the glasses to the side, you obviously don't want him to hit you with one of those glasses, right? So here's some more abilities. You saw the Beastly Roar cast, which is just some flat AoE. We have these circles here where he just jumps around and jumps on you when you do the circles. He also has the Charge Eradicated cast, which is what he did right now. And there's actually 2 in a row where I actually missed the first one here, but that's like this stack up marker. But he does leave this puddle in the ground, so you kind of want to do that in sort of a staggered fashion, right? So obviously me not standing in the first one wasn't the best thing, but we should have left from the puddle when the first stack marker was there. Other than that, now you see it again. So we have these blades. I have 1 blade, the person next to me has 2 blades, and the person on the other side of the platform has 3. So that is also the order in which he will do those slashes. And as I said before, you don't want the slashes to hit the beasts on the side. But this was a really decent group, so I mean, it's not the most challenging content in the game, let's be real, but obviously things can still go wrong. So here we have the AoE markers again. I think this ability is called Pounce Errant. And as I said, he will jump in succession as well, but the jump isn't that much damage, to be honest with you. So we're just gonna DPS him down. I mean, other than that, once you actually know not to let him hit some of the mobs on the side, you'll be fine. Alright, so now we can go on, and as I promised you, after killing Alpha Zagnal, as his name is, I would read to you some of the lore stuff we had before we got into the instance. This is a really cool drop though, before we go on. Like, I really like the elevation things they do in some of the instances here. And you have those cool, like, etherical effects coming out of the middle there, like the green mist you saw in a bit. Even though this part is a bit, I don't know, it seems a bit laboratory-esque to me, if that makes sense to you guys. There's definitely some cool things in the back, right? Alright, so let's go on with the lore bit. So the description is as follows. Befana of the Crystarian Guard has the look of grim determination in her eyes. Befana, a member of the Crystarian Guard, explains that the Exarch has requested your assistance. You are to enter the Crystal Tower and provide support to a team of researchers who plan to investigate the inner reaches. Unfortunately, their way has been barred by a number of hostile creatures and machinations, and their work cannot proceed until these threats have been eliminated. In the Exedra, Befana informs you that in addition to clearing a path for the researchers, you are to investigate the origin of an etherical disturbance detected from within. Though you are no stranger to the labyrinthine passageway of the Crystal Tower, your expedition will lead you into largely unexplored territory, where any number of hidden dangers may lurk. So, to continue, again, in terms of the trash that comes down here, there isn't too much that is very interesting. They seem to be sort of, I don't know, dimensional creatures, but they're all very derived from some of the mammals we see in our world, right? But they're all sort of typical Final Fantasy-esque characters, I would say, with really wacky names and stuff that doesn't really, you know, ring a bell in terms of, oh yeah, it's a hippogriff, or it's a, you know, the standard fantasy stuff you see in maybe in other games, which is refreshing to a certain extent. But as I said, other than the odd AoE circle there and maybe a cleave and stuff like that, there isn't too much interesting in terms of trash mechanics, at least in my opinion. So it's generally just AoEing down, and after a while we'll get to the first boss, the second boss, apologies, where things will get slightly more interesting. This was me getting really used to my AoE rotation as well. I believe this is quite a few weeks ago, but as I said, I wouldn't bore you too much with talk about my gameplay and such. So here we go again. I think this is the last pack before we go on with the future of the second boss. There's some of the data logs I noticed now as well, but unfortunately I didn't really click on those. I should click on those next time, because I think they can prove some valuable insights in what's going to happen next, right? So after killing these reptoids, we can just continue on with the second boss, and as you saw in the first boss, it wasn't that particularly challenging. I mean, the mechanics were interesting to a certain extent. You know, you had the glasses that were raking around. But other than that, there wasn't, because it was so forgiving to a certain extent. Like, if you know what you're doing, you can easily avoid it. It makes it a bit too easy, I would say. I'm not sure if that they are planning to do like hard dungeons in Shadowbringers, but if they would do that, then this one might be a very interesting candidate, because I think some of the mechanics that are in there are pretty interesting, but they are a bit minimal, if that makes sense. So here we go against our second boss. I'm just umbral souling up before we start. And the second boss is called Mythridates. Mythridates. And he looks like a harpy guy that has spent a bit too much time with his computer. At least that's how I would describe him. So this guy is a pretty simple boss as well. In essence, he does a tank buster. You see these orbs flying around in the room. They are called electric discharge, and they will explode after a certain amount of time. This one is probably the most, let's just call it, intense mechanic of them all. And you have some very narrow lines where you have to stand in to actually be in a decent spot. And that ability is called Laser Blade. There is one more ability we'll see after the... I think it's during the second Laser Blade that we'll actually see that one. And here it is. Here we go. So this is called Elegant Thunder. Pretty simple as well. It's just a AoE circle. So all of these are sort of things, you know, we've seen before. Don't stand in bad stuff. AoE circles. Don't stand in the orbs. The only thing that could sort of, you know, catch you off guard is that the orbs have a bit of a higher range than the rest. But now you see the combination of all three of these abilities happening at the same time. And that is probably, you know, the most difficult part about that fight. Again, just like the first boss, I have the feeling that the mechanics could be more interesting if they were a bit more unforgiving, you know. Put a lot more orbs on that platform. Make sure I have only one place to stand on the entire thing. Make it a bit more unforgiving in terms of the amount of time I have to stand on the platform. Stuff like that. At least the patterns, you know, they alter, and, you know, I'm getting sent out of my ley lines. But other than that, things are okay. I think one of our teammates got hit there, but that's fine. So yeah, second boss, I mean, visually interesting model, not gonna lie. But other than that, it's not the most impressive boss, not gonna lie. So yeah, after this we just kill it, DPS it down, and we continue on to the last part of this beautiful instance. And now we actually get to dive into the mist we were talking about earlier. So let's do just that. Repurposement, here we go. a bit of a teleport thingy-majig. And then we drop down into the collapsed passage where our destination waits. Now this is really one of the really cool scenes about this place. Right, so let's just skip through the footage a bit here. And as I said before, we are entering this really cool interdimensional. It's like we're in between two timelines, sort of aesthetics. And I like the color. I mean, I have the feeling that green isn't really used that much in this particular sense, but it really makes sense here. I wish though there was a bit more, and I'll come back to that after we finish the dungeon as well. I wish there was a bit more background here and there to what this is, what is happening, where we're going. So yeah, after this trash bag we need to go to another last room. The dimensional break. I mean, it's nice they put in these treasure coffers after like major trash bags here, but I do feel that especially in this place they do come around a lot, and generally at this point it isn't that interesting anymore. I think if you're just a recent level 80, then they is probably a bit more interesting, but yeah. So we have a few more trash packs to go. Again, yeah, it's pretty tank and spanked so far, to be honest, in terms of trash, right? I mean, I guess that's the definition of trash, but still, you'd want to, you know, do a bit more interesting stuff. So we'll skip on a bit again until we get to the third boss. Alright, so we're nearing the end of the trash bags and we're almost closing in on the final boss. Excellent. So here we go, the door opens and what do we see? Yeah, so this is definitely a lot of some cool stuff. We see Omega there, we see one of the scapes, this crystal tower, the top of the crystal tower. And there's some things in the background, but obviously the boss itself is obviously an homage to Alexander, right? And I believe in the, you know, lore of Shadowbringers, we find that the act of bringing the crystal tower to the first was this combination of research between the things we learned from Omega in terms of, you know, crossing space, and the things we learned from Alexander in terms of crossing time. So that would make sense that this boss, the anomaly that was tormenting us, is sort of an Alexander remake, if that makes sense. But this is a bit too open in my opinion, right? I'm filling this in and I'm definitely not getting my theories confirmed in this case. So there's some bigs in the background there, as I said. And here we have one of the, at least a cool looking mechanics. So he's shooting out these beams, but they're getting paused in time. And then once the countdown is gone, they actually go through, right? So I left my ley lines a bit too early there. It was pretty obvious. And here we have the same. But the, you know, the basic gist that I had with the other bosses as well applies here as well. It's a bit too forgiving. Like waiting 3 seconds before they go on. Them making huge noises and being really visible. Yeah, it makes this fight really forgiving. This mechanic as well, we have these, you know, red circles on the ground that they expand pretty significantly. Can't even speak. Significantly. And then after a while they explode. So yeah, interesting stuff. The guy is called, I should call him by the name as well, Artificial Enigma the Tycoon. So we have some tank busters. We have some of those laser AoEs that give a vulnerability up debuff. We have the black and red circles we just talked about. We have some of these circle AoEs called Shattered Crystal. And we have some, you know, some AoE damage in general. So, as I said, I mean, the guy has a fair amount of health compared to the other two bosses, maybe. But other than that, it isn't that... that was the AoE damage, High Tension Discharger. other than that, it's a really cool, you know, the Alexander model is probably one of the best models in the entire thing. And this looks amazing as well, you know, I like the little time effect at the end of the laser. But as I said, it's forgiving. It's forgiving. But things are going well for us. And it seems if you stay towards the edges, you're generally pretty safe. Obviously, there were a few spots that you can't really stand, but other than that, it's all good. Now, the background noise is obviously one of the more infamous Final Fantasy XIV tracks, which I like. There's one of the music videos around as well. I'll put that in the description for you guys to enjoy if you haven't seen that. And I think it's from the actual... I'm not sure if it's in the Epic of Alexander, but I'm sure it is Alexander related. Now here we get an interesting combination of these lasers, right? So he shoots one out from the outside in, and there's one from him to the outside. So now it gets a bit more hectic, right? But still... Maybe it's because we're just out DPSing him, and maybe if you were doing this the moment this instant came out, it was a bit more forgiving. But unfortunately, I cannot comment on that. So that was it. The twinning. So let's just read out this description from the journal still. Having conquered the ancient guardians that dwell at the deepest level of the Crystal Tower, the team of researchers may now go about their work undisturbed. Befana would no doubt wish to hear your account of the creatures you encountered, as well as any information pertaining to ethereal anomalies. And finally, according to Befana, the researchers have recovered a bizarre contraption from inside the Crystal Tower, which you recognize from your experiences on the source. So that is actually a piece I recorded a bit for you guys. Excellent. So we're outside again. We get to talk to Befana. So now she expresses herself like the amount of mystery going on the Crystal Tower. Obviously, you know, we're not very open about our background in that sense. And now she's going to show us the contraption that she found from inside the Crystal Tower. So I remember this thing from the way I unlocked the escapes on Savage. But yeah, if we give it a whirl, then it starts sputtering out some recording from a long past time. Namely the following. So yeah, he's giving us some, you know, some goodbyes, some good lucks to Gratia before he goes away. So this is a cool world building part that is to be admired, I would say. And even though this instance could use a little more background info as to what the anomaly exactly was and what was happening, why was it green, why was it, you know, in turmoil, all that jazz. It was a cool instance, I think, in comparison to the other instances of the expansion. It could use with a little more background, you know, it could use for a little more, you know, they gave us this chance to go back into the Crystal Tower. And they could have expanded on the story on what's happening a bit more, in my honest opinion. But still, pretty cool. We'll do a rating of them all once the expansion ends. But so far, at least, I have been a Myth from Millennial Fantasy. I hope you enjoyed this little different, more chill format about me chatting away about one of the instances I did a while back. If you like this kind of content, please let me know in the comments below. And if you like to see more of these kind of videos, please do not hesitate to like, subscribe, and please guys, take care. See ya.